Brendan and I are going to kick off. We're going to introduce ourselves. We're going to introduce a session, and we'll just get straight into it because otherwise we're bound to run out of time. Because Brendan tells me that he likes to talk.
I'm a chatter.
Fantastic. That's what we love. We love that. So, okay, we have a little introduction to cover everything. Make sure we don't forget to say anything. So, hello, and a very warm welcome to this NOI Group clinical discussion. My name is Joanna Taylor, and I am Operations Director of NOI Group Europe, and I am joined this morning by Brendan Mouatt. Did I get that right?
Nailed it. Oh, you nailed it, Joe. There's so much pressure riding on that.
So much pressure. I'm rubbish at pronouncing names. Brendan is CEO of NOI Group. So welcome, Brendan. Thank you. For
Thanks
those
for
of
having
you
me,
who,
Joe.
oh, it's great to have you on screen. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, seeing how it goes. I'm sure it'll be brilliant. For those of you that haven't met Brendan yet, he is a practicing exercise physiologist in Adelaide, Australia. He joined NOI Group as CEO in late 2023, and he brings over 10 years of clinical experience and has been delivering continuing education internationally since 2016. So, Brendan, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing professionally now? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Look, I've been kind of working in the health space for a bit over 15 years and finished my Masters of Clinical Exercise Physiology in 2013 now, and sort of went into clinical practice straight away, immersed myself in it, started a business with a good friend, and was just trying to lap up as much information as I could, doing as many continuing education courses as I could, and then try to reconcile that with the research. And what I realized was a lot of what I was doing in clinical practice wasn't necessarily reflected in the evidence base. And so there was quite a journey for me to try and reconcile why what I'd seen in clinical practice to be helpful for a lot of people and then for others not so much. And that complexity piece of dealing with pain and human experiences in general. And I think through just that engagement with learning about science and the evidence and trying to reconcile all of that, it took me back to doing another master's in research at the University of South Australia in Adelaide, and very slowly finishing my PhD at the tail end of that at the moment. So I've been in the research world for a little while now, which I absolutely love. It's the opportunity to be the dumbest person in the room all the time, and you just lap up all of the beautiful knowledge and questions that people have in that space. And then, like you said, I'm CEO at NOI Group now, so I've got the beautiful opportunity to look after, what's happening, what's coming up, what NOI Group is becoming in lots of ways, and getting to work with this incredible global faculty of human beings,
Mm,
where we've got people in research and clinical practice and in all of these other adjacent fields as well that make my
amazing.
life amazing and exciting all the
I
time.
know. We are
So
so
that's
honoured, aren't we, with the family of people that we have working at NOI Group. There's just amazing people, and we are all so lucky to be part of such a great team. We will be talking at the end of this session more about what we've got coming up at NOI Group. It has changed sort of beyond recognition in the time that Brendan has been CEO. So we are really excited to share some things with you, some things that nobody's heard about, completely new. You'll be the first people to hear about them. So we will come to that at the end, and I hope you have the opportunity to stay and listen to what we've got to share with you. So these sessions are all about giving you an insight into how Explain Pain continues to evolve and how to practically use it in the clinic. Some of you will have done an Explain Pain course already, and for those of you who have, these sessions are designed to just give you a refresh, a little reminder about things that you may have covered in the course. But if you haven't done a course, then this will serve as a fantastic introduction to what we think about Explain Pain, how it's evolved, how we're currently teaching it, and also just more broadly NOI Group. So just a couple of practical things to mention. Brendan and I will be talking for about 20 minutes about how clinical practice has transformed. And then we're going to come on and tell you a little bit more about what's been going on at NOI and the really, really exciting things that we've got coming up, and just really the direction that we believe that we're going in, and more broadly. So do hang around at the end if you can. If you have any questions during the session, please just drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on those whilst Brendan is talking, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. We always run out of time in these sessions, so if you've got a question, get it in early and you've got a better chance of getting it answered. If we don't have time to answer it, we do take them all away, and we will maybe come and cover them in a future session with Brendan. So without further ado, we are going to kick off. Today, we're talking about, are you still teaching pain science to patients, and how clinical practice has evolved in the last 5 years. So Brendan, from your perspective as CEO of NOI Group, what are you seeing in terms of how the most effective clinicians are now approaching pain education?
Yeah, Joe, I think there's a few things that have become pretty apparent. And I think one is over the last 5 years, we've had even a greater shift from this sort of didactic approach of just telling people pain facts or telling them about what they think is going on and educating kind of at them,
Mm.
to one that is more collaborative, where we sort of, sort of sit beside them in a way, proverbially speaking, and thinking about how we kind of help them to make sense of their current situation, to kind of explore the complexity that they've got going on. We've kind of moved on, I think, from, we've got one person that comes in with back pain and their symptoms can look identical to the person who
Mm.
came in before. However, when we really look at the factors that might be influencing their experience, the context in which they're living, the values in which they live by or want to get back to, are completely different. And so I think modern treatment really needs to reflect that. And we're seeing clinicians more and more engage in better ways, better strategies of how we can do that and be more collaborative in that
Mm.
approach. So it's sort of that embracing of that complexity and moving away from that linear thinking, the protocol approach to rehabilitation, to healthcare, and thinking about how is it that we can engage with this individual and sit beside them, start to give them some agency, some control, build their self-efficacy, and these other elements that we see are integral to mediating these long-term outcomes for what's
Mm.
going on.
Yeah, that may seem like a subtle change in some ways, but it's really not, is it? It's really profound.
Yeah, I think that's the second part to that. I think that I see, and I think they come hand in hand. And I wrote a blog on this not long ago because I think this is really important, and the research is really interesting as well. Is that clinicians are getting more comfortable with leaning into uncertainty. So being able to go into a clinical interaction and being a little bit more okay with not knowing where this is going to go, not knowing how they're going to feel along the way, and how this is going to evolve for that individual that they're trying to help also.
Mm.
And some of the research that we're seeing is that clinicians that are more able to lean into some uncertainty, hold some space for uncertainty, lead to much nicer outcomes for the patient. There's less burnout for us as clinicians. And I think it gives us a lot more scope to start to explore and try new things in clinical practice that we may not have thought of before, and where that individual can start to bring their story and their expertise with their pain story and their experience to the forefront, and that we can
Yeah.
guide that, facilitate that treatment interaction.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think we've actually done a session in the clinical discussions about leaning into uncertainty. So if I've dropped the link into the Clinical Discussions YouTube channel at the top of the chat, so go and click through there and subscribe. Check out what else I said. There's another about 40 videos of these sorts of sessions, so there's tons of content in there. But I'm certain that we did a session on uncertainty, so thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's something that gets talked about quite a lot now in our circles. So you mentioned that we've moved on from explaining pain at people to something much more collaborative. Could you give us maybe a practical example of what that might look like in a clinical conversation?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost is the importance and effort we put into now probably listening to their story and exploring their story, how this experience is shaping in their life, what pain means to them, what this experience means to them. In the last previous clinical discussions, Laura had a beautiful story just about drawing sort of a bucket, I think was her analogy, and going, what does pain mean for you, and exploring those things before we start going in and tinkering or trying to, influence some of those beliefs or understandings of what might be going on. Because I think without that, we are just assuming. And when we assume,
Mm,
I think that's where pain science education just goes wrong. And where I think we quite see the pain science education getting strawmanned as well, in social media and so on, is that
yeah,
people don't want to just hear more about pain. It's like, no, they probably don't, but they do want to make sense of their situation. They do want to have an understanding of what this means for them, how and what sort of strategies they can start to employ to start moving forward, in a way that is in line with their values and their life, and so on.
yeah,
Um, so it's kind of shaping out to look practically a little bit different to, what clinical practice was 40 years ago, where we were more the fixer, and now we're
yeah,
going, can we sit back a little bit here and be that facilitator, guide, and know that we do come with a huge amount of knowledge and expertise ourselves. So it's not to belittle that, but finding out how do we use that in a way that's going to sit well with that individual, where they can utilize that information in a meaningful way for them to engage in life.
yeah, 100%. So moving from being a fixer to a facilitator is really key. And I think that one thing that Laura, as you mentioned, Laura, she was very, very definite that Explain Pain is not a script. That this is a message that we feel really, really passionate about. That we really want to get this message out there, that that is not what it's about at all, and it is about helping people to understand their experience and clinicians having to get comfortable with uncertainty. But this is what the Explain Pain courses, and when you spend time with our teachers, and you can see, you get a feel of them in the clinical discussions. When you spend some time with these people, it starts to become a lot less scary because they're doing it, and they're doing it well and confidently, and they show you how you can do it too. It's
Mm.
so yeah, yeah,
And that's like one of those really interesting bits of feedback we get quite often after courses is people's expectations coming into an explain pain courses quite often of, I want to know what to say. I want to know the scripts in a way, and to be able to use those in clinical practice. And that I think comes from our own learning from a linear perspective. We've learned our whole lives. When we look at storybooks as children, there's these linear narratives. When we've looked at
mm,
phases of healing, we've taken a complex emergent phenomena and we've made it linear.
mm,
And so everything we do is made linear. And so I think it's natural that we come into a course and expect kind of these linear answers to how we can interact with a complex human being.
yeah,
And hopefully by the end of these courses, and I think the feedback talks to this, is that people are starting to go, hang on a second, I'm dealing with another human being, I'm a human. And I've already got a lot of the skill sets that I need to engage with this person, to explore and get creative. And I think that's where it kind of links to having less burnout, is because we're not trying to fix and take the onus of trying to fix everyone,
Yeah,
but we're finding these really nice ways to engage with these people in ways that help them move forward. And there's so much excitement
100%.
and value in that.
100%, all these things. I mean, there's just so many threads that you're pulling in here. And obviously, we're just skimming the surface today. You know, we do our
Mm.
best to sort of give people a flavor and a sense of the explain pain approach, if you like. But and obviously in the courses, the teachers go into these things in so much more depth. But you know, these are some of the key things that clinicians, this new sort of wave of clinicians, are having to get very comfortable with. And it's just all really, really great points there. Thanks, Ben. We've got a quick question that I'm going to pop in here because I think it's quite appropriate. So, from Prashant, how do you balance teaching pain science with validating patients' lived experience of pain so that it doesn't feel dismissive or overly cognitive? Thank you for that question. Brilliant.
It is a great question. And I think it's a really nice question because I think it talks to the idea of pain science education. I think we've often thought about it as being this explicit interaction. It's something that we say to people, which in a way makes it kind of this didactic thing. But
Mm,
we've got good evidence now that we make sense of the world not through just what other people say, but also what they do and our own experiences and so on. And so I think there's ways where at times being explicit and saying, educating around some pain science concepts or even some neuroscience at times can be really beneficial and helpful for individuals. For the next
mm,
person, it might just fall on deaf ears and not be appropriate. But it opens the opportunity, I think, for us to think about pain science education in terms of thinking about the types of treatments we might be using, or the way we might explore different behaviors or movements, or interactions with the world in whatever way, and then reflecting on that. And then starting to build on that with maybe some explicit education and so on. So, making sure we listen, we validate their experience, and then from there, think about do we start to explore these different things from different angles at times. I
mm.
think we've got lots of ways to do pain science education without ever really doing pain science education verbally at times.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ashan. Absolutely. It's something that we get asked quite a lot. So just moving in on through our flow, Brendan, I don't want to lose track too much. What does the latest research tell us about why these shifts in our approach are matter for clinical outcomes? What is the research telling us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm being harassed by our cat at the moment. There's a long story behind this cat, but I won't go into it.
We love a
Source of
pet
pain at
on
times for
screen.
me, as well. I think well, I mean, there's huge amounts of growing evidence around how our beliefs, our previous experiences all influence and shape our pain experience, but not only our pain experience, how we're going to engage with healthcare, how we're going to engage in our environment, how we perceive our environment as well. I mean, if we feel more fear, we scale our environment, we perceive our environment to be more threatening, or
Mm,
more difficult to engage with. And from a evolutionary perspective, it makes all sense that we do, change our perception based on these, different factors. So I think there's a lot of perceptual science that's emerging. There's a lot of belief in previous experience, or research looking at those factors and how that might shape the way that we engage with the world. Some of my research is looking at in particular, when we, manipulate the type of pain science or the type of education we give someone about a type of treatment, and then the type of treatment we provide them as well. And what we've seen, interestingly, is if there isn't congruency between what we say as a clinician and what we do for that patient in terms of their sense making,
Mm,
then they are going to feel less safe. They're going to have less internal locus of control, so they're going to seek help sooner if pain was to return, and so on. And kind of what I mean by that is that if they believe, we've said maybe some really nice contemporary pain science concepts to them. This is what we think is going on. You can be sore but safe, and so on. But then we do a really specific intervention to them, and their sense making of that intervention is that, oh, they've done something to me, they've fixed me, maybe they put me in alignment, even if that wasn't our intention and what we thought was going on,
mm,
then that incongruency is enough to change the way we behave and act in the future. And so it comes to play. Then we can start to think
mm,
about taking that sort of research and think about, all right, so if we're going to do these interventions, maybe we need to have a conversation with that individual about what they think is going on when we do this treatment. How do they make sense of that? And maybe we need to maybe provide a bit of other education, or perhaps we need to think about a different treatment strategy for that individual that's going to create that congruency,
mm.
reinforce those key pain concepts that we're trying to get across, and have them take that on board. So huge amounts of evidence for that in those spaces, those cognitive spaces. But I think one of the other things that we're seeing is that we are bringing in and making sense of the biomechanical data, the biomedical research, and marrying this together in a really, really nice way, going, hey, we can't separate that brain from that body, or that body and person from that environment. And knowing that is, I think, really needs to be reflected in our clinical practice. That we're treating this individual in all of its complexity within its environment. And although that can maybe feel a bit overwhelming in terms of its complexity, I think it brings so much hope to the story because there's so many different factors that we can influence and engage with this
Mm.
individual, and that they can get control of in their life.
Yeah, 100%. That reminds me of a quote by David Bolton, who is one of our he's a NOI ambassador and teacher, and he pretty much runs the clinical discussion group in Facebook. Do I'll drop the link to that in the chat so you can join if you want. And he always maintains that the hands are another way of talking to the brain, and I love that quote.
Absolutely.
It says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
absolutely. We've got so many ways to help people make sense of the world, their bodies, and how it's all integrated.
Yeah, it's never one or the other. Sometimes the pendulum swings and then it sort of comes back a bit. It's never just one
Yeah,
way.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like when we start to really appreciate that this brain body environment, nervous system, it can't be separated from each other. The pendulum sort of ceases to exist,
Exactly.
because we're going, how, for that individual sitting in front of us, how do we promote the greatest self-efficacy, decrease worry, improve their general health, help them improve their general health, and have helpful beliefs around pain and recovery, because we see these as the key mediators for people, regardless of the interventions used in randomized controlled trials. These are the key mediators, or the important
Mm,
ingredients that lead to these positive outcomes in terms of pain and function. So, hey, we've got all of these different strategies we can be using depending on our context and our background. None of them are inherently bad, but we can start reflecting with good, strong clinical reasoning that's backed by evidence, in how we approach, how we
mm.
engage with those strategies.
I've seen one question that I would like to just ask here before Brendan and I just start to move on to our session wrap up. I do apologise that we can't get to them all, but it's the question from Hamish Wilson. And I think this is a question that we get asked so often. Um, an example. Could you provide an example of this approach, um, of a more patient-centered approach? I know you mentioned one just a couple of minutes ago, but can you think of something, another example of a patient that you may have worked with where you felt this was really sort of a good example of this? the newer explain pain approach?
I Yeah, I can, and I'm cautious not to be trying to like script it out because I think there's a part here
Yeah.
where we're all going to approach it differently, and that's okay and totally normal. So I think a part of explain pain courses are trying to give people permission to explore themselves and start to figure out what works for them. But if I
Mm,
if I think back to before I even thought about approaching pain science education in this sort of way. There's one particular gentleman that I can think of, and he had fallen out of a helicopter. He was in the military, had fallen out of a helicopter, broken his spine 10 years before he came to see me. And I remember in front of him bending my spine backwards because he was telling me that he couldn't stand up straight and he felt that his spine was like a stack of dishes. And I remember standing in front of him and going into spinal extension and just watching him cower and experience real pain for him. And that was um, you know, really epic. And he said, if you make me do that, I'm going to hit you. And that stuck with
mm.
me, this threat. And I was right teetering right on the edge there of he's never going to come back, or I'm going to have a black eye and he's never going to come back. And I think that threat really shocked me into, all right, how am I going to engage with this individual and sit alongside them and start nudging this individual in the right direction, help facilitate. And maybe I have to hold his hand actually quite a lot to begin with, and then move on from there. And he ended up doing fantastic over it took time, but for me it was very much an example of I was going too hard too soon with some things, and it really brought me back to going, I've got to listen here. I've I've got to be, strategic in how I engage with this person. So
Absolutely.
not answering the question that well, I don't think, because yeah, it's
You,
complex.
an example is so good though. It's like you could feel that penny drop moment, and it's so good to have these clinical examples. Thank you. I am so sorry, everybody. We can't get to all the questions today, and there are some brilliant questions in there, which makes me think that what I will do is I'm going to take a copy of all the questions, and next time I can get Brendan in the hot seat here, we'll do a session based on one or two of these questions that have been dropped in there. So keep an eye out for that because there are some fantastic questions, which we do thank you for. But I can also see some of them have already been answered in the sessions that we've done previously in the clinical discussions. So please go in and subscribe to the YouTube channel because you will find sessions on exactly some of these topics that you're asking about. So just very quickly to wrap up, Brendan, the changes and the developments in explain pain and clinical practice that we've talked about today, they apply to beyond just pain patients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things is we're dealing with humans and human experiences. And so I think these skills, although we still call the course Explain Pain and probably will, ongoing, because there's brand to that too. I think it transcends so many clinical interactions that you'll have. So absolutely, Joe, I completely couldn't agree more with that.
Fantastic. So, for people who have been inspired about what Brendan's been talking about today, and they want to ensure that you're using these sorts of approaches with your patients, the most current approaches, uh, could you just walk us through, Brendan, the different ways that people can learn at NOI nowadays? Because it has changed so dramatically. So
Yeah.
we've got self-paced courses. Can you tell us about what NOI are offering now with the self-paced on-demand
Yes.
courses?
Yeah. So we've got these self-paced on-demand courses. So you've got Explain Pain. And we've got a really cool new supercharged version of Explain Pain. This is the first time that we've said this in public as well, and that's coming very soon. And so I will be accompanied with Ben Boyd. We'll have guests like Lorimer Mosley, David Butler, Tasha Stanton, Dr. Jane Chalmers, who's works in pelvic pain, all of this really great stuff that will be out soon. So keep your eye peeled for that. And the on-demand stuff's great because, they're going to be, short videos, but really still the comprehensive content that takes you through all of these different elements of pain science, education, and pain. So eyes peeled for that. There's also other on demand coming very, very soon. In fact, we're launching one right now, and that's Ebony Rios, Dr. Ebony Rio, who is an amazing clinician and researcher
It's amazing.
in the tendon space. And her on-demand course is 10% off for anyone on clinical discussions tonight. So this is just for you. Not to be salesy, but I think it's going to be a fantastic course. I know it's a fantastic course. So 3 hours of content. I think, Joe, maybe you can put the link just
They're all in the chat. Check those links, click through.
awesome. Check that there. It's there. If you click that link, it'll apply the 10% discount straight away. And you are the very first to be able to get access to that. So check that out. Then we've got our live courses still.
Yeah.
So which are amazing because you get to have those conversations, you build the network and the community, and the NOI Group community, like Joe has said, is just
Mm.
so strong, so powerful, and it's one of the most amazing things in my life to be a part of as a clinician. So it's very, very powerful. So check that out. If you are in the UK space, also an announcement just for you guys is EP3, our 3 day um, special course is coming to London in June 5th to 7th next year. So there's a link there in the chat as well where you can register your interest there to make sure that you are first to hear about the early bird ticket release, which will be very, very soon.
It's Loz, isn't
Because
it?
that'll be
Lorimer,
that's
Tash.
Lorimer and Tasha Stanton as well, and a whole host of soon to be named special guests, which I'm very excited about. Very hard to hold back
I
some of that
know.
excitement. And then there's still the online courses as well, which means through Zoom, this sort of interaction, but where you can still
Mm,
be asking questions in real time, exploring this stuff. So fantastic if you can't get to a live course and you want that human interaction component. The Explain Pain online courses. We've got the Embodied Pain Science Education courses, which takes some really nice stuff around. Um, Embodiment of these pain science concepts and strategies to bring that in
mm.
to the clinic. There's those courses there as well. So that's all at noigroup.com, and you can check out what we've got there. But just keep your eyes peeled because we've got so many new on-demand courses coming soon as well, so many projects in the works, and all of our publications as well. There's more in the works. It's exciting, it's busy, and it's just fantastic to be part of this community. It's so much fun.
We love it. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on more than anything is that when you leave the classroom, we do not leave you. We are here. We are always here. We have the Clinical Discussion YouTube channel. We have the Facebook group. There are teachers around the world supporting people who have done our courses in every time zone. So we are going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, Brendan. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing your insights about the changes in pain science education and for giving us a glimpse on how NOI Group is evolving to meet the changing needs of our clinicians. And thank you, everybody, for joining us live. Oh my goodness, it's been so good. We absolutely love connecting with our audience. So click the links, check us out, see what's coming up at NOI. We are so excited and we have had a fantastic time this morning with you all. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, whatever time it is for you. Thank you, Brendan. Great to spend some time with you. Take care,
Thanks, Joe.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.